My name is Leona Thompson. I'm 26 years old. And the moment I realized my father was canceling my surgery, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at him across the kitchen table of our suburban Dallas home, my fingers gripping the edge so tightly my knuckles went white. "You can't be serious," I said finally, my voice cracking despite my effort to keep it steady. My father, Robert Thompson, didn't even look up from his coffee. He stirred it slowly, like we were discussing weekend plans instead of my ability to walk. "Leona, don't be dramatic. It's just a postponement." "A postponement." "Dad," I said, forcing myself to breathe through the familiar spike of pain in my knee. "I've been waiting 9 months for this surgery." He sighed, annoyed. "Your sister needs this trip." There it was, as casual as a weather report. 7 months earlier, my life had been split cleanly in two, before the accident and after it. I was driving home from a night shift at Dallas Methodist Hospital, exhausted but grateful. I just started my nursing position, fresh out of the University of Texas at Arlington, finally standing on my own after years of double shifts and student loans. I was less than 10 minutes from home when a drunk driver ran a stop sign and slammed into my Toyota Camry. The impact was violent enough to shatter my right kneecap into pieces. Emergency surgery saved my leg, but that was all it did, save it. The reconstruction surgery I needed was the difference between walking normally again or spending the rest of my life with a cane, arthritis, and constant pain. My orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Rodriguez, didn't sugarcoat it. "Miss Thompson, without this reconstruction, you're looking at permanent disability, chronic pain, severe arthritis within a few years." I was 26. The idea that my body might never fully recover terrified me more than the accident itself. My father had promised to help. My insurance wouldn't cover the full procedure yet, new job, 6-month waiting period, and there was an $18,000 gap. Dad owned a successful plumbing business. He didn't hesitate. "Family takes care of family," he said, squeezing my hand as I lay in that sterile hospital bed. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He'd always been a decent father, flawed, distracted, prone to favoritism, but still my dad. That favoritism, of course, had a name. Jane, my older sister, the golden child. When we were kids, Jane got new clothes every season. I got hand-me-downs. When she wanted to attend Southern Methodist University, Dad paid for everything. I worked double shifts to afford nursing school. When I bought a used Honda, Jane got a brand new Mercedes for her 21st birthday. I never complained. That was just our family dynamic. Different needs, my stepmother Patricia always said. Different needs usually meant Jane wanted something. But this wasn't a want. This was my ability to walk. I scheduled the surgery for October 12th, took medical leave, lined up help from my best friend Taylor. I followed every instruction, attended every appointment, endured every sleepless night in pain, believing relief was finally coming. Then, 3 weeks before surgery, Jane called. She only used my nickname, Leo, when she wanted something big. "I need Dad's help with something really important," she announced, her voice already rehearsed. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "You know how stressful this divorce has been," she said. "I need a reset, a real one." She told me about a transformational healing retreat in Costa Rica. 3 weeks, private beaches, shamans, yoga, chakra alignment. $22,000, she said lightly, "but it includes everything." My blood went cold. Dad already said he'd help. I hung up and called him immediately. Before I could speak, he cut me off. "Just hear me out." "Dad," I said, my hands shaking, "you promised to pay for my surgery." "And I will," he said. "Just not right now. Jane needs this." "She wants a luxury vacation," I said. "I need surgery to walk." "Don't be selfish, Leona." Selfish. That was when I knew. The next morning, he confirmed it. "I transferred the money to Jane," he said. "Your surgery will have to be postponed." I stared at him across the table now, my knee throbbing, my future suddenly uncertain. "You chose her vacation over my ability to walk," I said quietly. He finally looked up. "It's not permanent," he said. "You'll manage." That was the moment something inside me broke. And what happened next would change everything. The pain in my knee flared as I stood up from the kitchen table, sharp and unforgiving, like it wanted to remind me of exactly how fragile my situation was. "You're telling me to manage," I said slowly, forcing myself to meet my father's eyes, "when my doctor has warned me that delaying this surgery could permanently damage my knee." Dad exhaled through his nose, irritation flickering across his face. "You're catastrophizing." "No," I said. "I'm listening to a medical professional." Before he could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Patricia appeared in the doorway, perfectly styled as always, hair smooth, blouse pressed, expression already defensive. "Why are you raising your voice at your father?" she asked, like she'd walked in on a teenager throwing a tantrum instead of a grown woman fighting for her mobility. "He canceled my surgery," I said, "to pay for Jane's retreat." Patricia's lips tightened. "It's not a vacation, it's a wellness program." "A $22,000 wellness program," I shot back, "while I can barely walk." She crossed her arms. "Jane has been through hell." "So have I said, my voice shaking now, despite myself. "I was hit by a drunk driver. I work 12-hour nursing shifts in constant pain. I'm burning through sick days I don't have." Dad pushed his chair back. "Lower your voice." "Why?" I demanded, "so we can all pretend this is reasonable?" "This conversation is over," he said sharply. "I've made my decision." Something inside me hardened. "Yeah," I said, grabbing my purse. "You have, and so have I." I walked out before either of them could stop me, the door slamming behind me hard enough to rattle the frame. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking, not just from pain, but from the clarity settling in. I was on my own. That night, Taylor sat across from me on my couch, her jaw clenched so tight I thought she might crack a tooth. "Your dad chose a luxury spa vacation over your surgery," she said. "That's not favoritism anymore. That's neglect." I stared at my swollen knee, propped on pillows. "I don't know what to do. I can't afford $18,000. "Have you talked to anyone else in your family?" "No," I said. I didn't want to make things worse. Taylor snorted. "Leona, they already are worse." The next day, at our monthly family barbecue in Plano, my cousin Jake pulled me aside. He'd overheard Taylor venting. "Is it true?" he asked. "Uncle Robert paid for Jane to go to Costa Rica instead of your surgery?" I nodded. Jake's face darkened. "That's insane. Have you talked to Grandma?" I shook my head. I don't want to drag her into this. "This isn't drama," he said firmly. "This is wrong." The following morning, Dad called. "I just wanted to make sure you understand," he said. "The money's already gone." I hung up without replying. That was when I started documenting everything. Every text where he promised to pay, every email about the surgery date, every medical record stating the urgency. Not because I wanted revenge, but because some instinct deep inside me whispered that I might need proof. A few days later, my friend Connor, who worked at a law firm downtown, glanced through what I'd compiled. "Leona," he said carefully, "this is a clear case of promissory estoppel. He made a promise. You relied on it. Now you're suffering because he backed out." "You're saying I could sue my own father?" I asked, sick to my stomach. "I'm saying you'd have grounds," he replied. "Whether you want to is another matter." I didn't want to. I wanted him to keep his word. But he didn't. Jane left for Costa Rica 2 days later. Her Instagram lit up with photos, sunsets, yoga poses, captions about healing and rebirth, while I struggled to climb stairs at work, my knee deteriorating day by day. Dr. Rodriguez warned me bluntly during a follow-up appointment. "Delaying much longer could cause permanent damage," he said. "I need you to understand the risks." I did. That was the problem. A week later, my phone rang. "Leona, sweetheart," a familiar voice said. "Jake told me what's been happening." My chest tightened. "Grandma?" "Yes," Grandma Rose said, her tone already steel-hard. "Is it true your father canceled your surgery?" "Yes," I whispered. There was a pause. Dangerous. Deliberate. "That boy has lost his mind," she said finally. "Don't worry. Grandma's going to fix this." I tried to protest, but she cut me off. "Hush. I'll call you back." 2 days later, she called again. "I've scheduled a family meeting," she said. "Everyone will be there." My stomach dropped. When Grandma Rose called a meeting, no one dared skip it. I had no idea what she planned. But whatever it was about to change everything. When Grandma Rose called a family meeting, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a summons. By the time I arrived at her house in Richardson that Sunday afternoon, every car in the driveway belonged to someone I recognized. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Even Jane, who had flown back early from Costa Rica after what she later described as resort complications, sat stiffly on the far end of the living room couch, her tan already fading, her designer sunglasses perched on top of her head like armor. My knee throbbed as I eased myself into a chair near the wall. Taylor had offered to come with me, but Grandma had insisted this was family business. Still, she'd squeezed my hand before I left. "Whatever happens," she'd said, "remember, you didn't cause this." Grandma Rose stood at the front of the room, hands folded over the head of her cane. At 82, She was smaller than she used to be, but the authority in her presence hadn't diminished one bit. The room fell silent the moment she cleared her throat. "I've been watching this family for a long time," she began calmly, "long enough to know when something is wrong." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Patricia sat beside him, lips pressed together, eyes darting around the room as if calculating exits. "Robert," Grandma continued, fixing her gaze on my father, "is it true that you canceled Leona's medically necessary surgery?" Dad straightened. "Mom, it's more complicated than—" "Yes or no?" she said sharply. He swallowed. "Yes." A murmur rippled through the room. "And is it also true," Grandma went on, "that you redirected that money to fund Jane's luxury retreat in Costa Rica?" Jane opened her mouth. "Grandma, it wasn't—" "Yes or no?" Grandma snapped again. Jane's shoulders slumped. "Yes." Grandma nodded slowly, like she'd already known the answer, but needed the truth spoken aloud. "I am deeply ashamed of you," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "Both of you." Dad bristled. "Mom, Jane has been through multiple divorces. Her mental health—" "Is not treated with beach yoga while her sister can't walk," Grandma cut in. "Mental health matters. So does physical health. And you chose." She turned her gaze to the rest of the room. "This favoritism didn't start yesterday. I've seen it for years. I allowed it because I thought it was harmless." She looked back at Dad. "I was wrong." Dad opened his mouth again, but she raised a hand. "I'm not finished." My heart pounded as Grandma reached for a folder on the side table. Thick, organized, prepared. "I am restructuring my will," she announced. The room went completely still. "The portion of my estate previously designated for Robert," she continued, "will now go directly to Leona for her medical care, recovery, and future education if she chooses." Dad shot to his feet. "You can't do that." Grandma's eyes flashed. "Watch me." Jane stood up too, tears already spilling. "Grandma, this isn't fair." Grandma turned to her slowly. "Fair? Your sister was facing permanent disability. You were facing inconvenience." Jane's voice broke. "I needed healing." "And she needed to walk," Grandma replied. "Sit down." Jane sank back onto the couch, sobbing. "And as for you, Jane," Grandma continued, "the trust fund you've been relying on is frozen." Jane's head snapped up. "What?" "You will not receive another cent until you prove you can support yourself without handouts," Grandma said. "1 full year of steady employment." The room erupted, voices overlapping, questions flying, but Grandma banged her cane against the floor once. "Enough." Silence returned instantly. She turned to me then, her expression softening for the first time that afternoon. "Leona, sweetheart, come here." My legs trembled as I stood, pain flaring with each step. Grandma reached into her folder and pulled out a check. She handed it to me. The amount made my breath catch. Not just enough for the surgery, but for recovery, physical therapy, and time off work. "This is not charity," she said firmly. "This is justice." Tears blurred my vision. "Grandma, I didn't want—" "I know," she said, squeezing my hand. "But sometimes people need consequences to learn." Dad stared at the check like it was a personal betrayal. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," Grandma said coldly. "Your choices did that." Jane bolted from the room, Patricia chasing after her, whispering frantic reassurances. The rest of the family sat stunned. One by one, people began speaking up. "I had no idea it was this bad," my Uncle Samuel said quietly. "We all saw the favoritism," my Aunt Linda added. "But canceling surgery? That crossed a line." Dad sank back into his chair, shoulders sagging. The meeting ended in uneasy silence. Later that evening, Uncle Samuel pulled me aside. "I know an excellent physical therapist," he said. "I'll cover all your sessions." I nodded, overwhelmed. "Thank you." 2 weeks later, my surgery was rescheduled. It went perfectly. Dr. Rodriguez was thrilled with the results. "You did the right thing not waiting longer," he said. "Your recovery outlook is excellent." As I lay in the hospital bed afterward, knee-wrapped and aching, but hopeful for the first time in months, I felt something else too. Relief. But while I was healing, everything else was unraveling. Jane's Costa Rica retreat turned out to be a disaster. The luxury resort lost her deposit, provided substandard accommodations, and offered 0 refunds. Without access to her trust fund, she panicked. To make matters worse, her ex-husband's divorce attorney froze her remaining assets after discovering financial discrepancies Jane hadn't disclosed. Dad called me furious. "Look what you've done," he snapped. "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "You made a choice." Everyone else responded. He hung up on me. But the fallout wasn't finished. Not even close. Recovery was brutal. No one talks about how lonely healing can be. The surgery itself had gone flawlessly. Dr. Rodriguez was almost giddy when he explained how well the reconstruction had held, but the days that followed were slow, painful, and humbling. I couldn't shower without help. I couldn't stand for more than a few minutes. Every movement sent sharp reminders through my leg that healing was not the same thing as being healed. Taylor moved into my apartment for the first 2 weeks without hesitation. "You're not allowed to apologize," she told me the first time I tried. "You spent your whole life being overlooked. Let someone show up for you." Family members I barely spoke to began calling. Cousins checking in, aunts asking if I needed groceries, Uncle Samuel texting reminders for physical therapy appointments he insisted on covering. It was strange, this sudden attention, almost uncomfortable. But it made one thing painfully clear. People had noticed the favoritism over the years. They just hadn't wanted to deal with it. Physical therapy was exhausting, humbling. Some days I cried in the car afterward, gripping the steering wheel as my knee throbbed, wondering how close I'd come to losing all of this forever. Other days I felt powerful. Each degree of movement regained felt like a victory stolen back from the edge of something permanent. While I was rebuilding my body, Jane's life was falling apart. Without access to Grandma's trust fund, and with her remaining assets frozen due to the divorce investigation, she couldn't sustain her lifestyle. The luxury apartment in Uptown went first. Then the car payments became a problem. Then the credit cards. She called me once, late at night. "This is all happening so fast," she sobbed. "I don't know how to live like this." I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. "This is how most people live, Jane." "That's not fair," she snapped. "I didn't ask for this." I almost laughed. "Neither did I." She hung up on me. Dad didn't speak to me at all during my recovery. But his world wasn't holding together either. Word travels fast in Dallas, especially in tight business circles. His plumbing company had thrived on reputation, loyalty, trust. And trust evaporates when people hear you chose a luxury vacation over your daughter's surgery. Uncle Samuel told me quietly one evening, "He's already lost 4 major commercial accounts." I winced. I didn't want that. "You didn't cause it," he replied. "Actions have consequences." 3 months after surgery, I was walking without pain. 4 months in, I returned to full-time work at the hospital. Stronger, more confident, less willing to shrink. That was when I met Nathan. He was a paramedic, steady, observant, calm in a way that felt earned. We met during a follow-up appointment when he was transporting another patient. Our conversations started casually. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into something quieter and deeper. He never treated me like I was fragile, just honest. One evening, as we walked slowly through a park near my apartment, he asked, "Does it bother you that your family hasn't reached out?" I thought about it for a moment. It used to. Now, I think it bothered me more when I believed they would. Meanwhile, Jane was forced to do something unprecedented. She got a job. A retail position at a boutique in North Park Mall. She lasted 10 days. She was late every shift, my cousin Grace told me later, and spent half her time on her phone. Jane complained relentlessly. "Do you know how exhausting retail work is?" Grace, who had worked retail all through college, replied flatly, "Welcome to the real world." Jane didn't last long enough to earn sympathy. Dad finally reached out, not with a call, but a text, on my birthday. "Happy birthday, hope you're doing well." I stared at the screen for nearly an hour before replying. "I am, walking without pain, thanks to Grandma." He didn't respond. Thanksgiving approached like an unresolved storm cloud. Grandma Rose called me with her usual authority. "I'm hosting this year. You'll be there." I hesitated. "Will Dad be there?" "Yes," she said, "and there will be no drama, or people will leave." I took a deep breath. "Then I'll be there." The dinner was tense from the moment I walked in. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Jane sat stiffly at the table, wearing plain clothes instead of her usual designer outfits. Patricia kept attempting cheerful small talk that landed flat every time. Finally, Grandma put her fork down. "Robert," she said, "don't you have something to say to your daughter?" The room went silent. Dad cleared his throat. "Leona, I was wrong." The words hung in the air. "I made a terrible decision," he continued. "I see that now." "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Or are you just sorry about the consequences?" He swallowed. "Both." I nodded slowly. "You almost cost me my mobility permanently." "I know," he said, "and I'm truly sorry." "Sorry doesn't undo months of pain," I replied, "but it can be a starting point." Jane couldn't stop herself. "This is all so unfair." I turned to her calmly. "You knew. I told you. You just didn't care." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The dinner continued, awkward but civil. As Nathan and I left, he squeezed my hand. You okay? Yeah, I said. I said what I needed to say. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. A year changes things. Not overnight, not cleanly, but slowly, like pressure reshaping stone. By the following spring, the chaos that had ripped through my family had settled into something quieter. Still fractured in places, still tender, but undeniably different. Dad started therapy. He didn't tell me at first. I found out from Grandma Rose during one of our weekly calls. He finally admitted he created this mess, she said bluntly. Enabling is still harm, even when it wears the disguise of love. I didn't feel triumphant hearing that. Mostly I felt tired. Tired of being the collateral damage in someone else's learning curve. But I appreciated the effort. Jane, forced into reality without safety nets, was still struggling, but she was changing too. Slowly, begrudgingly, honestly. After failing at retail, she landed a receptionist job at a veterinary clinic in Garland. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with praise or perks, but for the first time in her adult life, she showed up consistently. 10 months in, she complained to me during a family dinner at Grandma's. I hate it, she muttered, pushing food around her plate. The pay is terrible. But you're still there, I said. She glanced at me. I hate being broke more. That was the closest thing to growth I'd ever heard from her. Grandma didn't budge on the trust fund conditions. Monthly allowances only. Mandatory financial counseling, no exceptions. She needs structure, Grandma said, not rescue. Meanwhile, my life kept expanding. My knee healed beautifully. I finished physical therapy stronger than I'd ever been. I returned to tennis. I received a promotion to nursing supervisor. For the first time, my body and my future felt aligned. Nathan was steady through all of it. One evening, 2 years after the canceled surgery, he knelt in the living room of my apartment. No dramatic speech, no spectacle, just quiet certainty. Will you marry me? He asked. I said yes without hesitation. Dad found out through Grandma first. He called me the next day. I'm proud of you, he said softly, and I know I don't get to say that without earning it. I let the silence sit between us. Then I replied, we're rebuilding. That matters. He offered to pay for all my physical therapy retroactively. I accepted, not because I needed the money, but because accountability matters too. He also started doing something small, but significant. When he helped Jane with car repairs, he offered the same to me. When he paid for something of hers, he checked himself before doing it automatically. I should have done this years ago, he admitted once. Yes, I said, you should have. At Thanksgiving that year, the energy was different. Still cautious, still careful, but real. Jane lasted the full year at the clinic. Grandma unfroze her trust fund, under strict conditions. She's learning, Grandma told me, and you taught her something without trying. How? I asked. By surviving, she replied, and refusing to disappear. One evening, after dinner, Jane pulled me aside. I didn't understand what it meant to be overlooked, she said quietly, until no one helped me. I studied her face, older now, less polished, more real. I didn't want you to hurt, I said. I just wanted you to see. She nodded. I do now. Dad and I aren't perfect. We may never be, but we talk, we listen, we correct course. And that's more than we ever had before. 2 years after the surgery that almost didn't happen, I stood in the best shape of my life, physically and emotionally, planning a wedding I'd never thought I'd reach. Grandma Rose squeezed my hand one afternoon and smiled. You saved yourself, she said. I just provided backup. She was right. Sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't destroy families. Sometimes it forces them to finally change. And sometimes that's the only way forward.